Hi, this is Garibay. Today we're going to talk about Middle Earth. We're going to talk about tabletop role-playing game industry. We're going to talk about free league publishing, and we're going to talk about the fate of the brick and mortar tabletop role-playing game company in America. All right. So there was an announcement, I think it was yesterday, that it was it was specifically in the second week of March 2020. It was announced that Free League Publishing had just gotten the license to make the Middle Earth tabletop role-playing game. All right. Now, this is bad news. This is bad news for the American tabletop role-playing game industry, and it is bad news for Dungeons & Dragons. Let's talk about why. All right, so first of all, what's Free League Publishing? Free League Publishing is a international tabletop role-playing game publisher. And guess what? If you ain't been paying attention, international tabletop role-playing game publishers are coming up swinging. They are coming out hard right now. All right, so who are the big ones? Well, Free League Publishing is one of them. So what have they made, right? Well, they made Forbidden Lands. They also, this is to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong on any of these, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. All right, so basically they made Forbidden Lands. They made Tales from the Loop. Tales from the Loop is really fascinating. Tales from the Loop is a really fun tabletop role-playing game that actually is getting a connection. Oh my gosh, I just figured this out. I realized, wow, sorry, when I have an epiphany in the middle of my YouTube video. I just figured out how Free League got Middle Earth. I figured it out. Oh, wow, okay, I'm about to give you some information here. There's some connective tissue here, like, between this. All right, so here's how Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth, ended up with Free League Publishing for tabletop role-playing game licensing rights. All right, it happened from Tales from the Loop. All right, so Free League Publishing is an international, it's not a U.S. shop, okay? It's an international TTRPG shop, okay? Now, to my knowledge, I'm pretty sure they are a brick-and-mortar shop, right? Now, what do I mean by that? That means that every day, men and women put on their pants and they go to a building and they sit down and they make tabletop role-playing games and they get coffee at the coffee machine on their coffee break. That is not a small thing. There are incredibly few of those places in the world, okay? And there are really few of them in America. I can count them on one hand, okay? Hasbro Gaming, they make Dungeons & Dragons. I think they still have a brick-and-mortar actual office for Monty Cook Games, right? Like 4 people work there. Bruce R. Cordell and Monty Cook and Shauna Germain and maybe one and a couple other people in there. So you got that, right? So, that's about and Fantasy Flight Games, but Fantasy Flight Games is not an American company. They're owned by Asmodee, which is a French company, right? So FFG is actually an international tabletop role-playing game publisher, right? So there are very few brick-and-mortar American TTRPG publishers that even exist anymore, okay? But Free League Publishing is a brick-and-mortar tabletop role-playing game publishing. They're a real company, right? Like, this ain't just some garage shop, right? This ain't a garage band, right? This isn't some dude, fulfilling a Kickstarter from his garage every 3 months, right? Which, hey, God bless them. Lots of people do it, but come on, I'm talking real companies, real scale, right? So here's the thing. Free League Publishing published Tales from the Loop. Tales from the Loop is essentially Stranger Things before Stranger Things existed. But it's set in Scandinavia, so that's one of the reasons why Americans didn't give 2 rat tails about it, right? They're like, oh, great concept, set in Scandinavia, don't care, bye. But that was enough to kill that game, right? And it did not do great. Tales from the Loop it's a great game. I own it. It's fantastic, but it didn't really capture American hearts and minds. Okay, but get this, Amazon picked it up. And there is going to be a Tales from the Loop show, which is great. That's huge for a tabletop role-playing game. For a tabletop role-playing game to land an Amazon series, that's a big deal, right? Amazon Prime. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to watch it on Amazon Prime. So that's the connection, okay? Amazon Prime picks up Tales from the Loop. Amazon Prime now owns a tabletop role-playing game. Amazon Prime now has a series based on a tabletop role-playing game. Now Amazon Prime is like, oh, hey, we can make series based off of tabletop role-playing games, right? Well, Amazon also bought the rights to make Middle-earth, Lord of the Rings sequel. They paid $500 million for it. There were reports at one point that $250 million went straight to the Tolkien estate and $250 million went to make the show, and we're all waiting for that, okay? But that's the connective tissue, right? Amazon Prime is both involved in a Middle-earth series and in a Free League publishing series, right? So that's where they're connected, right? So that would be one reason why Free League would have the juice to get a license that big, okay? Now, why is this bad for America? Well, this is really bad for America because, one, America is where tabletop role-playing games originated, right? And Middle-earth is the biggest fantasy setting in the world. It is still the preeminent fantasy setting, right? Harry Potter is not bigger, and Harry Potter is fading because mostly because J.K. Rowling won't let other people write in the world, right? I know there's some play or whatever, but generally, unlike Lucas, who unlocked his world and unlocked it for lots and lots and lots of writers, which allowed for diversity, allowed for people of color to jump in, all kinds of different things. J.K. Rowling is keeping their world locked down, so her fantasy world is not growing, right? So, with that said, Middle-earth is the biggest fantasy title in the world. That should be with a brick-and-mortar American tabletop role-playing game house. It's not. It just went to an international house. That is a major, major, major problem. It means that American tabletop role-playing game industry is losing ground to the international tabletop role-playing game industry. That's not a good trend. That is not a good trend at all. And I would definitely like to see the good old red, white, and blue start gaining some ground and honoring its red, white, and blue American TTRPG father, Garibay. Now, the reality is I definitely really like that the international tabletop role-playing game industry is growing, but I don't want to see being taken the Lord of the Rings title, right? And also, this also means now that Free League has the Middle-earth license, it means another 5 or 10 years where Middle-earth cannot be an official Dungeons & Dragons property, which stinks as license. That is not good. When is this going to happen? It should have happened like in 1975, right? But it certainly isn't going to happen now, and we're going to be lucky to see it happen in 2025. All that is my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion on the subject. Please let me know. I'd love to hear your opinion. And let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.